Hello and welcome back to JC's Writing Advice. I'm JC Bybee, indie author, writer coach, and YouTuber. I have 10 books that I've independently published, and you can find my books and my author mentoring services at my website, jcbybee.com. You can also support me over on Patreon and help me buy a chair that doesn't do that. Today's video is going to be titled, What Happens When? And this is going to hopefully be a reoccurring segment that I do where we talk about some of the struggles that writers have. And today's is, what happens when it just doesn't work? We're going to talk about what that means, what I'm going for. As we start off, what happens when one scene doesn't work? You're writing along and you get to a scene, you finish it, and it just doesn't feel right. So a couple of questions. You can ask yourself, does that scene need to be in this part of the book? Does it need to be in the book at all? I have deleted scenes that I've written. 4,000 words just gone. Well, not gone, but we'll talk about that. Because they weren't right for that book. And you have to be able to be okay with that. Is it the right time? Are your scenes out of order? Maybe the idea came to you and you wrote the scene, but you're a discovery writer, like myself, and that scene actually needs to happen later. Or maybe it needs to happen earlier and you need to make a few adjustments. Do you have the right characters? This sort of ties into the previous one. Maybe you haven't introduced the right character yet that makes the scene flow better. So maybe, again, it needs to go further or later in the book. Maybe you have too many characters there and it needs to happen earlier so it's bogged down with fewer voices. And when I'm talking about the right setting, consider the world that you're writing it in, and is the scene happening in the right place, in the world. Not necessarily in the story, but in the world. Maybe you need to change the location. Maybe you need to reconsider, again, where, when, and how it's happening. And that can adjust where the scene is, or if all else fails, maybe it's just not right for this particular book. We talked about revisions last week, and revisions is one of the tools we use to help us understand this particular aspect. Another way you can go about helping you with scenes is hiring a developmental editor, hiring a writer coach. I'm not a developmental editor, but I have written 10 books. I can get a feel for stories really well, and I can help you say, okay, this scene is good, but maybe it needs to go elsewhere. Or maybe it doesn't need to be in this book. And I can help you work past those. You can also start or be in a critique group. They could also help you. If you go to the podcast I'm part of, Third Person POV, you can see us critique each other's works live. So you are, well, as we do them, they're not actually live. But we upload our critique sessions so you can see how we give feedback and how we make adjustments. That way, when I go back and I look at the pieces that I've submitted, I can understand. I have 3 different perspectives looking at them, telling me and giving me information. What happens when a character arc doesn't work? Questions to ask yourself. Is it the right character? Is this arc meant for your main character? Or maybe it should be going to the sidekick. Maybe the sidekick better fits this character. Or maybe the love interest better fits this character. Maybe the dad or the mom or the mentor figure. I don't think it's ever going to be quite that extreme. But you have to make sure that the arc fits the character. And you have to be ready. Make sure that they are ready and you have set up. Because have you set the story up for this particular part of the arc? Have they learned enough? Have they, taken enough beating? Have enough bad things happened for them to be open to learning whatever lesson they need to learn in this particular part of the arc that you're trying to write. And does the arc help the narrative or does it hurt the narrative? One of the things I've talked about in previous videos is things need to help the narrative move along. And we're going to talk about pacing in another video, and I need to write that down. So before I forget, you get to see me do this pacing. It should be hopefully Thursday's video. We'll see. Does the arc, as it's happening, help or hurt the narrative? And if it does, then you can look at the other questions. If it's hurting the narrative, maybe you need to change it. Maybe you need to delete it. Maybe that character doesn't need to exist. Or maybe it needs to happen over more than one book. The publishing world sometimes is very reluctant to publish series for whatever reason. But maybe you need to do a duology. Maybe you need to do a trilogy. Something to allow the arc to happen across multiple books. What about an entire act? Maybe Act 1 just doesn't work. How's your pacing? Do you have the right character arcs happening in this act? Is it serving the overall plot? Are you actually supposed to be writing Act 1 this way? Maybe this is actually Act 2 and you need to step back and start a different Act 1. Maybe Act 2 is actually Act 3. I know that seems odd to think about, but if it's not working, you need to look at how you're managing and all of the moving parts of your story. And the next two kind of go hand in hand, word count and genre. I write superhero procedural. If you pick up these books, you're not expecting an 800-page epic fantasy. I had 50, 60, 70,000 words is different than 100, 150, 200,000 words. And it fits different genres, different concepts. So if your act isn't working, maybe you're too short, maybe you're too long. Things that you need to consider as you're writing it, and maybe go back and trim some things, maybe go back and add some things. And is the whole book not working? This is one that terrifies people to think about, but it can happen. Consider the point of view. Do you have the right point of view character? Do you have the right characters? Is the plot an actual plot? Have you got it paced out to where it can go from point A to point B to point C to point D in a way that's satisfying? Maybe you need to add in a couple of things. Maybe you need to take a few things out. And that's pacing. Pacing is really important. And then, have you started in the right place? Have you ended in the right place? Is the middle connecting those two? Last but not least, what do you do when things don't work? A couple of suggestions. You change your point of view character. Maybe try writing it from the sidekick's perspective. Maybe try writing it from the best friend's perspective, the love interest perspective. Maybe try writing it from, one example, in my book series Iridescent, the first book is titled Lost Souls. It is written in a memoir-esque fashion of her telling her story from way into the future. But she's telling about when she was a kid. It's a completely different approach and frame narrative that I'm working with. Maybe you need to do more research. When I say fill in more backstory, I'm not talking about adding more details into the narrative itself. I mean, you need to make sure you have the research, because if there's a knowledge gap, sometimes that can help bridge the gap between understanding why or why not something's working. Maybe you just need to do a little bit more research. And again, maybe you need to reconsider how the plot arcs run, how the character arcs run. And last but not least, you can, and there are caveats with this one, delete the whole thing and start over. I have done that with 2 books. With Hero Unit 2, I was 30,000 words in. The way I was writing it didn't work. I deleted it and started over. I wish I would have kept those 30,000 words, because now I offer my deleted scenes from my books as something people can get as part of my Patreon. And I think it would be interesting. It's always interesting to me to see how a project progresses from draft 1 to finished draft. So that's why I offer those as deleted scenes. So if it gets to the point where the story's just not working, when I say delete it, I don't mean make sure the words go away, put it in your recycle bin, and then empty your recycle bin. I mean, put it in a different folder and start over from the beginning. And a lot of people will hear me say that and cringe. Like I said, I've done it with 2 books. I did it with Hero Unit 2, and I did it with Telvanna Mysteries 3. I restarted Telvanna Mysteries 3 3 different times. And it was an equivalent of about 30,000 words that I just put into a deleted scenes document and moved on and started over again. It's still the same story. It's just how I started it and how I progressed it was different. And those are all things that you can consider as a writer. And the way you learn these things is you give them to another set of eyes to help you. A developmental editor is huge. A writer coach, like myself, can really point out, maybe this scene needs to move here. Maybe we need to try a different beginning. Your critique group can look at it and say, well, I don't think this character arc is working. I don't think this fits this character very well. And again, above all, it is still your story. It's still your book. As a writer coach, I'm not going to come in and try to make it my book. I'm going to try to make sure you can finish your book in your style. But maybe the organization just needs to change. Maybe you need to consider where you're putting your plot arcs or who you're giving your character arcs to. That's the job of a good developmental editor. That's the job of a good writer coach. That's what a good critique group will do for you. All right, that wraps that one up for today. Hopefully you found some useful information. Hopefully the sound of my chair creaking didn't detract too much. I thank you for taking the time to listen, taking the time to stop by and hear what I have to say. If you found something of value in what I've done today, go ahead and give it a like. Please share this video with other writers, people that might be interested. Go ahead and leave comments, especially if there's something you want to hear me talk about and my take on. And with that, I hope you have an awesome day, and thanks for stopping by.